Hello everybody and welcome to Decepticasts episode 4. Today is a user submitted replay day, and so let us begin this 1500 level replay. We've got the blue Eldar with the Warp Spider Exarch versus the red Chaos with the Chaos Lord. Little slow on the start and no heretic worship to slingshot the Chaos Lord out. Which is a little bit of a mistake right off the bat, but the player in question is complaining of a mouse bug in the chat, so that's understandable. A bit of a passive capture pattern from the red player, where we have more of an aggressive one from the blue player. Traditionally on this map, people like to swing one squad out to grab this wreck point and then this victory point for blue, and then, you know, symmetrically for red, while letting their other squad cap this stuff. That's a pretty typical capture pattern to put your enemy on the back foot right away.
Support structure complete.
But with the Warp Spider, this is an advantageous capture pattern because of this building here. So it looks like blue player is trying to bait red player into charging forward so he can hop in. And blue player, I'm sorry, is Jaumister, and we have the red player, Hagawaga. But I'm going to call them blue and red because I'm not sure either of those pronunciations are correct. Heretics getting chewed up, suffering already 2 model losses from this Warp Spider Exarch. 3. And now the Warp Spider's going to have to get out of there pretty quickly. And he's successful in doing so. Over here the Chaos Lord's still capping, while the blue player has got his Guardians in the middle and a Banshee squad up. Red player, meanwhile, has gone for double Chaos Space Marines.
The dance of blades begins. Generator operational.
Chaos Lord outnumbered here, but those Banshees surrounding him are just going to feed him health like that. He is forced to retreat ultimately. We've got upgrade coming for the Banshee squad, the aspect of the Banshee. Meanwhile, red players capping back this whole side of the map after the Warp Spider was driven off. Bit of a gen harass, but Guardians are pretty slow at killing a generator. Guardians do have their battle equipment now, so they do have the ability to drop grenade spikes. Red trying to do a bit of flanking here. Well, with the Banshees in the rear, this might not work out for him.
Support structure complete.
But the Banshees pull back instead of charging forward,
I am under attack.
as the Heretics worship to hopefully bring this squad in to the battle more quickly. But stop just as they get there because of the Banshees. Chaos Marines are actually pretty good at melee for a ranged unit, so those Banshees are going to have to run away. Especially with the worship to chase them down. Aspiring Champ on the Heretic squad, now having to retreat. The Warp Spider was being a little risky. Meanwhile, the Chaos Lord is flanked up from behind with the Combi Flamer and driven off the Guardian squad quite effectively. You can manually discontinue that ability. You don't have to let it channel out the whole way. Just as a tip.
The enemy is claiming a victory point.
Our kin watch from above.
So the blue player now is on the back foot with both his squads on low health, his hero on low health, and having to fully reinforce down from one model. Meanwhile, red player is now able to capture much of the map and is doing so, while his Chaos Marines shoot this generator slowly. Shuriken Cannon now up for blue player. And red player chatting about how his flank worked merrily in the game chat. Alright, here comes the Shuriken Cannon. These Chaos Marines need to be careful. They finish their cap, they pull right out of their range just in time before getting suppressed.
We are the Banshee.
The full Eldar force advancing while the Chaos Force converges.
Blade will get its place.
Weapons team at your command.
Oh, model down on that Chaos Marine. They're charging in. They should not be doing that. The Combi Flame were sort of wasted on this area here as the Banshees were already out of that area by the time he cast it. Meanwhile, Guardians are doing some smart backcapping.
Pitiable attempt, heretics.
Personally, I would have gone with the Guardians in this encounter because you can't use the Banshees on the Chaos Lord at all. And they're not that great against the Heretics either because of the Doom Blast.
What is a Farseer
Whereas
command?
Guardians could have grenaded the Heretics and added additional ranged fire from the safety of being within the firing arc of the Shuriken Cannon. Slingshot forward with Heretic worship, but the Banshees are there to meet it. And then, of course, kill the weak, heals the Chaos Lord up, allowing him to stay in the battle a bit longer. Although the Warp Spider with the improved targeters is able to do quite a bit of damage. Force melee on the Shuriken Cannon, but there's a building right here that the blue player smartly is hopping into, and the Chaos Lord goes down. Trying to use his flamer, it looked like, on the Shurikens in the building. And the entire Chaos Force is forced to retreat. Meanwhile, the Guardians are still doing quite a bit of backcapping, and both players are going to tier 2 at relatively the same time. But at this point, red player has more power income and more wreck income
Exile, prepare to lead
due
your
to having
sisters.
controlled these 2 points for that whole time. Shuriken having to do some capping work to get the victory points back in blue player's favor.
We have succeeded in our objective.
The Chaos Force is moving out to intercept these Guardians. They're in a little bit of danger here. They need to be careful. They're not even in any cover where they're standing. Eternal War going up on this Chaos Space Marine squad. Pretty traditional upgrade time for that during the upgrade to tier 2. Of course, the terrible mistake red player's talking about in chat there is I believe he accidentally canceled teching to tier 2. So 3 Guardian models down. See, that he could have seen them coming and retreated a little sooner. Although it is tough to keep track of everything, but there weren't any other combats going on, so all this could have been automated while he carefully watched the mini-map for any red dots. But the Guardians did get out in time and will now reinforce.
An increase in territory.
And red player's gonna have to recap all this area. While the Warp Spider
We have our prize.
comes in to try to stop this cap on the victory point. Personally, I think he would have been better off trying to decap this wreck point or harass this generator, since this is already low on health.
Our reinforcements are here.
Think yourself worthy, Lord of the Slaves.
And with the Combi Flamer, the Chaos Lord is doing quite a bit of damage to this Warp Spider,
Say on.
who decided to stop and try to go for this power node instead of going for the power node back here, which is the actual juicy, fully built farm.
An opportunity to
The Banshees now have their X-Arc, so they'll be a bit of a bigger threat, but the Chaos Space Marines that had Eternal War are now Corn Marines, and Let the Galaxy Burn goes off, substantially weakening the Banshees, who are still in a little bit of the Ember ground. They need to get out of there quickly, but Malignus Blindness made it so they couldn't see what was coming. And the Shuriken Cannon, down to 2 members, down to no members. It is wiped. But a Wraith Alert is out for blue player. And red player does not have any dedicated AV. Corn Marines do very, very light damage with their plasma pistols. Or what are they called? Inferno pistols.
I hear you.
But not going to be able to take on a Wraith Lord in melee, as the Wraith Lord's sword does an area of effect sweeping strike, I believe.
Adding warp generator.
Oh, nice sync kill on this heretic here, crushing his head and then slamming him into the ground. Brutal. Meanwhile, the Warp Spider is going to decap this red victory point. And for red player, we've got some Plague Marines coming out.
Generator operational.
A decent choice for AV. The rocket does snare, and they will be decent against the Banshees as they do their little detonation. In cases where a walker is out, it is generally wise to go for a setup team with the laser, as that does snare from quite a long range and do quite a lot of damage. It is unlikely that a vehicle hit by a setup laser team is going to survive for long.
The enemy has 300 points remaining.
Corn Marines upgraded with their aspiring champion, worshipping in the Plague Marines. Nice hit there, but not very much damage. That melt a pistol from the aspiring champ. Meanwhile, the Chaos Lord's doing a little backcapping.
Preparing filament alignment.
You never want to bunch up like this when you're capping a point, especially if you're anticipating an attack. Banshees and Wraith Lord going in on the Heretic squad. They're going to have to get out of there quickly. The aspiring champion falls. The Plague Marines are being attacked. One member getting slammed around. Horn Marines going in on the Guardians, but the Wraith Lord turns around to support. Rocket into him from the Plague Marines. This one member is a little bit off here. The Tzeentch Marines gonna have to retreat, and it does look like the Heretics went down on retreat. Nice sync kill on the Tzeentch Marine. Guardians forcing off the Plague Marines, but the Plague Marines going into melee instead of that retreat they looked like they were leaning towards. Instead forcing the Guardians to retreat. And the Wraith Lord is pulled back as well. A red player complaining that Chaos AV is too expensive, but again, Havocs aren't that pricey, and the upgrade to Las Cannon, or I believe it's the Tzeentch upgrade, is not too pricey. Wraithbone going up on the Wraith Lord so that he can heal, but of course he could just be being repaired by the Guardians right now. If he went back to base.
We are assembled.
Warp Spider forcing back the Plague Marines.
The enemy is claiming a victory point.
Little tip to Hagawaga, everybody suffers Rock Choke in Tier 2 if their power hasn't been harassed at all. It will just end up being that your power gets ahead because you haven't been using too much of it. But generally, your power gets destroyed and power ends up being the choke. Let the Galaxy burn, nice placement there, getting the Guardians and the Warp Spider Exarch. But meanwhile, the Plague Marines forcing out the Banshees because of their self-destruct when they die. That both heals them and damages enemies. These Guardians need to get out of here, fleet of footing out of the Combi Flamer burning ground and then retreating. Meanwhile, the Wraith Lord has driven off these Plague Marines, but a second squad of Plague Marines is out in the field now. The Elder is at Tier 3, but the Chaos player is not yet.